Welcome to Spicer and Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, Sean, last night we saw a big shakeup in the Trump campaign with the president replacing his campaign manager, Brad Parscale. And as you know, Parscale has been heavily involved since his win in 2016, and now Bill Stepien will take the role of campaign manager. But, a lot of people making a big deal about this change. Do you think it's that big of a deal?
It's really not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things. I mean, the president's pretty much been his own campaign manager for a long time. Jared Kushner has been heavily involved in choosing the campaign manager and helping to run the campaign. Brad's still obviously going to be involved, and you're right. I mean, he was critical in terms of the digital strategy in 2016. But also, Bill Stepien was there. He was brought in as the national field director in August 2016. So elevating him, he was already a deputy campaign manager, is really just, I think, a realignment of where things probably should have been going forward. Bill's sort of wheelhouse is understanding get out the vote and messaging going big into this. So, the question has been, when was this going to happen more than if it was going to happen? I know Emerald Robinson on our team has been covering this. Emerald, why don't we bring you into this conversation? What are your sources at the White House hearing? Because as I mentioned, I think this has always been a question of when, not if.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it did catch some people by surprise, but we've been hearing this for about 3 to 4 weeks. I know that the president has been under pressure, not only from some of his supporters who worked with him in 2016, political operatives, but also some major donors who just felt like Brad Parscale was not delivering. Now, we had been told at Newsmax that could happen last Friday. Clearly, it was a few days later, but the president had been getting phone calls. People have been coming to see him and saying, look, you're going to have to make a change because Brad Parscale, yes, he did a good job in 2016 with the digital, with the data analytics, but he's just not got the experience that they need to do the kind of ground game that they feel that the president needs to do now, because he's in a different situation, Sean and Lindsay. At the beginning of the year, he had a great economy. He was planning to run on that. Several things were going in his favor. Now there's a pandemic, and they need to run a different ground game. And that's something that Bill Stepien can really step in. No pun intended. Sorry, I'm such a cheeseball sometimes. And help with.
Emerald, you had this Tulsa rally and then the non-rally in New Hampshire. Do you guys, I had a sense that after the Tulsa rally, that was not a good omen for Brad because, you're right. He had said, I'm the data guy, I'm the digital guy. And then they started bragging about having 1 million RSVPs and they get, whatever it was, 10,000. And I thought, okay, if you're selling yourself as the expert in that area and you get less than 10,000 people to show up, that's not a good sign. And then the non-rally in New Hampshire, I felt like that was probably, the beginning of the end.
That's a really good point, Sean. And that's not the only digital, the only problems they've had on that side. In fact, there was an article in Real Clear Politics either yesterday or today suggesting that one of the apps or some of the digital side in which they called for volunteers to sign up and try to get those ground volunteers to go knock on doors, put up signs, things like that all across the country had failed. That's something that apparently the campaign wasn't even aware of until it was brought up by this reporter and questions asked. So they had a lot of people sign up to help out with that ground game that they're looking to really up before 2020, before the November election. And people weren't getting the follow-up emails with the information on how they can get involved and what they need to do as next steps. And that's a big problem. So the question is, yes, Brad Parscale is staying on as digital director and to help out with those things that are, supposed to be more in line and more his forte. But if they're having digital problems like this, and that wasn't the only issue that they've had digitally, what is his role really going to be?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think, Lindsay, let me ask you a question. Last cycle you were involved in the convention and you had this shakeup with Corey Lewandowski and Paul Manafort stepping in. When you guys were at the convention, how hard was it to adapt to a new, head of the campaign coming in that close to the convention? Because this is almost very similar between that shift between Corey Lewandowski and Manafort and now Parscale and Stepien.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sean. And I think a lot of people are asking, how much is this going to affect the campaign because it's so close? But, with that shakeup in 2016, it really didn't mess us up that much. People just pivoted quickly and readjusted. And obviously we know how that election turned out. It turned out well. So I think we're kind of seeing some of the same. And like you mentioned, Emerald, you just find the right person. Now it's time to change gears. And people have said, oh, we're only 4 months out. But we've seen it before and it worked out. You got to get the right people in there. And I think this is just when Trump, this is kind of his MO. When he sees someone that needs to be out, he doesn't say, oh, we're only a few months out. He's like, change it now. So, I think that it will end up turning out well. But it wasn't an issue in 2016, even though people made news of it.
And I want to go back, Sean, I think you made a really great point in the intro to this segment, is that at the end of the day, Jared Kushner is in so many ways the de facto campaign manager. So while we're talking a lot about this change up so close to convention, we may not see that much in the way of changing with messaging or strategy, really, because Jared Kushner is still very much the head of that campaign.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I think the difference between this cycle and last cycle is that Bill was part of the campaign already, and Brad is staying part of the campaign. So it's more of a realignment than a shuffle of new and out with the old and in with the new. Last time it was get rid of Corey, bring in Paul. This is now, just kind of realign the roles of folks who are going to stay in the campaign.
Yeah, and I also think when you look at Brad Parscale, he has been loyal to the Trump family, and I think the campaign has come out to say and said he's not being fired or demoted. This is like a change like we're talking about, because he has been so loyal to them. But I think they're finally seeing he didn't really have the resume ever. He had never been a campaign manager before. So this was a new role for him. And I would say probably one of the toughest campaigns ever when you have social unrest, when you have a global pandemic. And so this is no easy task for anybody. I think, it wouldn't matter how many years you had under your belt, you would still be up for a challenge.
Hey, Emerald, let me ask you this real quick before we go. There was a sighting today of Brad Parscale at DCA, Ronald Reagan Airport, obviously heading back to Florida. Do you think optically that doesn't look good, which is, hey, he's still part of the campaign, but he's on a plane to Florida?
Right. No, it actually doesn't look very good for Brad Parscale. It suggests that maybe he's not going to be involved as much as they say he is, and that perhaps this is a safe face send-off. So we'll just see. Like I said, it's going to be a question of how much involved is he really after this.
Right. All right. Well, this is great. I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, we're going to really see how this all shakes out and what that change really meant. So thanks for joining us. Look forward to getting some more updates.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, Montana is a traditionally red state. President Trump carried the state by 20 points last time. And while it's not in play presidentially, the Senate race is very much in play. Incumbent Senator Steve Daines is in a tough re-election race. He's going to be here to join us, talk about it real soon. It's very important how that race plays out in terms of control of the Senate. We're going to get his take. And kids going back to school, what's really going on? Trish Regan's going to give us her take